Good evening, and you're very welcome to a little bit later than planned edition of the Women's National League podcast, or the LOI Women's podcast here on finalwhistle.ie. My name is Breifne and Aaron, and once again, I'm joined in the co-host chair by Aaron Clark of the WNL show. Aaron, you're very, very welcome again.
Good evening. Good evening. Looking forward to it. Maybe one of these days I'll get the seat on the left hand side of the frame.
That can be arranged if you want. Everything's flexible here. We've had that discussion earlier in the build-up. We are a little bit later than we had planned to be, but that is fine. We wanted to make sure that the show was of the best quality. So, unfortunately, we've had to be just a little bit delayed, but we will be bringing you all of the roundups of the weekends from last weekend. Some big games there. Shells left it late against Athlone. Cork put up a really impressive performance, particularly in that first half against Shamrock Rovers. We'll be chatting about all of the games from last weekend. Where did you happen to be, Aaron?
I went to Bows against Sligo, just due to circumstances of timings. It was the only game that suited my needs or what was available to me on the Saturday for timing. So ended up in Dalymount. Wasn't the greatest of games. It was one of them that whoever scored first, it looked as though would be the only team to score, and both teams really cancelled each other out. Wasn't an awful lot of quality in terms of passes or in the final third. I think either side will be, well, both sides will be disappointed with their performance. Bows, though, considering they took 6 points against the bottom two in the last 2 weeks, they'll be happy with that. But performance-wise, it wasn't great, and it was a difficult enough game to watch at times.
Yeah, Galway United, of course, 1-0 win over 3-9. A lot of the games are similar, headed goals from set pieces, all from corners. Lisa Murphy getting the winner for Bows, Eve Dawson getting the winner for Galway United, and as I mentioned, at the very death for Shells, it was, oh my God, Christy Gray, exactly who it was. Christy Gray came up with the winner just at the death for Athlone as well. We'll talk a bit more maybe about a penalty incident. Was left out of the highlights. We'll talk about the highlights as well, because the highlights packages frustrate the hell out of me at the moment. It's just the goals, nothing else. There's no real highlights to them other than the goals. And I think we're missing out on an awful lot of action and a lot of discussion and opportunities to do that. But the other game we haven't quite mentioned yet is Wexford Youth, their 2-0 victory in DLR Waves, goals from Ciara Rossiter and Michaela Lawrence. And someone who knows a little bit about what the mood is like in the camp in Wexford at the moment is our guest today. We're going to bring her straight into the conversation. And that, of course, is Della Doherty. Della, you're very, very welcome to the show.
Thanks a million for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
No, it's going to be a good one, I think, because you've got a valuable insight this year, because unfortunately for you, you're probably unlikely to feature for Wexford this year. Do you want to tell us maybe a little bit about how the last 6 or 7 months has been for you since you picked up that injury at Piedmont last year?
I suppose it was just at the first kind of couple of weeks getting to grips with the injury and kind of understanding what the injury was and how long I was going to be out for and how to tackle it. And I think over the last 3 months after getting surgery, I kind of seen that path back to playing. So I think in a good headspace, and obviously being in a club like Wexford, you can't ask for better support. So definitely it's always hard to be on the sideline, but I think having the attitude of kind of knowing you're going to get back, and it's really helped now that I've actually, this evening was my first training session on the grass. So that was very good for the head too. So I'm kind of looking forward to what the next couple of months have in store.
Talk to us a little bit about the injury itself, Della, because normally we see people injuries that they maybe tear the ACL or they do one thing, but you actually done quite a lot of damage to the leg as well.
Yeah, I did multiple things. So I did my ACL and MCL, and then broke a few bones in my leg and my knee as well. So I suppose at the start it wasn't a regular ACL, so it was kind of coming to the grips that it was kind of unknown territory for everybody. I kind of had to get MRIs and get things like that done to see exactly where I was and what the kind of recovery looked for me. And I suppose having the girls who've done ACLs on Wexford before, it was a really big help. But I suppose I had that little bit of unknown territory of people who haven't experienced the full-blown injury that I've experienced. But that comes back to, you look at other players who've experienced bad injuries and how they come back to play and things like that. So I think it was at the start, like I said, coming to the grips with injury, and then kind of, I'm very much a planner, so it was planning how to come back onto the field. And again, the support was massive around me. I don't think I would have got through the first few months as well as I did alone.
I was going to ask you about that, not only in the first couple of months, but the first couple of days or weeks. Like, we watched, I suppose, in slight horror at you leaving the field, and you look very upset on TV at the time. first of all, everybody who knew you was probably watching the game to some extent. Everyone knew the news maybe before you did that your season was out for this year. How do you cope with that from a mental point of view?
I suppose the first kind of couple of days was more shock than anything, I think, and it was actually coming to the grips to what actually has happened and how easy it happened, because it was literally a split second, and it was like just understanding that injuries happen in soccer. And I think definitely the first couple of weeks, first couple of days were the most mentally grueling. I still have bad days to come, and I've had bad days before, but I kind of take them first few days as great learning. And when I kind of come into difficulties now, I kind of think back to where I started and where I am now. I suppose the first couple of weeks were the hardest because I kind of lost my independence as such. I couldn't walk, I couldn't do things for myself. So I think that was the hardest thing to come to grips with at the start. But it's kind of understanding now how far I've come, and even to be stepping on the pitch is kind of something to be very proud of myself for.
I remember the night the league decided the last round of the league games, even just coming onto the pitch and how much of a struggle it was for you with the brace on the leg and with the crutches. Like when you look back, even you missed such a big game to finish off your season. You were flying at that stage. You were performing very well. Like what's that like? How do you even process that? You know, yes, you're starting to get the news. Is that secondary, or are you already thinking recovery, what I need to do? Because you talk about the damage you've done. Like how long did it take before you actually knew what was actually done?
So fortunately for me, Wexford are such a good club, and they got that ball rolling really fast. So it wasn't like I was waiting around not knowing what was happening. I knew within the week what the kind of story was. But to say how long it took me to process that was probably maybe 2 or 3 weeks after by the time I actually processed it. And I suppose it was very disappointing walking into the dressing room for our final game against Shelbourne with everything it stands for, and they're the games you want to play, I suppose, as a player playing one of the top teams in the country. So I think everything like that, it was trying to understand emotions. And I suppose as hard as it is for Ellen to have done her ACL, I think having her support and for us to be able to lean on each other was massive.
I was going to ask you about Ellen, because obviously you're not the only person in the club who's out long term of the start 11 every week who's missed a lot of game time now. Have you had each other, like how has that worked for each other? Do you know each other, or kind of are you friends off the pitch? Would you hang out?
Yeah, we definitely would. I suppose we came up through underage together as well, so I think we have that bond off the pitch as well as on the pitch. And I suppose it's really good for me to see she's that little bit ahead of me, to see kind of what I have ahead of me and where I can get to. And then obviously we can bounce off each other on the good days and the bad days as well.
Do you lean on people like now? Obviously, she's back with the club. Rihanna Jarrett, Kira Rossiter, Adele Kennedy. Do you lean on these sort of players much? Because obviously they've been through the recovery stage as well. Because some parts, even for, although Ellen's a couple of weeks ahead of you, there's still unknowns for Ellen. There's still unknowns for yourself. Do you lean on them sort of players for a little bit of advice and comfort?
Definitely. I think even before the injury, there are players that you would lean on as a young player in the club. So definitely now that I've got the injury and they've kind of experienced the mental, the physical, all that kind of grueling stuff that comes with the injury, they're definitely players that you have conversations with, the easy ones and the tough conversations.
Yeah, looking towards, I suppose, this season, I know you haven't been involved on the field, but I understand you've been involved heavily in the club, kind of been at all the games and training sessions and stuff like that. What's life been like for you as an injured footballer at the moment?
I suppose it's never easy to kind of watch people step on the field when you want to be there yourself. But I think the only positive I can kind of take from not being able to play is that you get to kind of watch the games and analyze the games. And I suppose I'll come back with probably more football knowledge than I probably ended the season with last year, because I'll look at things maybe that you don't really get a time to look at when you're a player or when you watch back games yourself, because you're kind of looking at yourself or looking maybe at players around you. So I suppose by watching games this season and analysing them from a different perspective, I'll probably come back with that little bit more football knowledge.
What do you look for when you're looking at that sort of thing? Like, because I know you've done a bit of coaching with the likes of the Leinster schools, you've been involved with stuff like that. So what do you look for when you're watching on, especially being injured?
I suppose from a defender's point of view, it's kind of how our team versus the other kind of defensive team, how they play out, how they defend, how they manage stepping up and all them kind of things. And then you look to positions in front of you, like the midfield. How can you support the midfield? You kind of see when you take that step back away from it, when you're not in the middle of it, and you're kind of not kind of crucifying yourself as such. You can take yourself out of the situation and see how can you actually help the players in front of you and around you.
Yeah, it's been an interesting while for you down in Wexford. What's the mood like this season? Like, how's it started off fairly rough in terms of results, but you seem to have picked up a bit of form in the last few weeks with some really impressive victories. Things good in the dressing room?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's like as most people would say, it's like a family down there. If you ask any player, it's definitely in the dressing room. I love to be in. I wouldn't want to be in any other dressing room. But the mood is very good. I suppose we had a tough run of kind of results, but that's who Wexford are then, to kind of pick ourselves up again and be able to go again. And I think now we've got the wheels rolling again. I think Saturday was a good show, and we played well. We had good possession, and then we got the goals as well, which I think obviously we've been struggling with a little bit to kind of get that final touch when it's needed. So I think that's kind of the wheels are rolling with that there now. So it's good to get a 2-0 win on Saturday.
What was it like though when, like, because at the start of the season you obviously lose 3 games in a bounce, but it wasn't. If there's more to it in the fact that it was a real stop-start, played a game called off, international break, played another game, gap. What was that like?
I suppose that kind of we struggled with consistency then when we were kind of in and out, and like nothing's going to get you ready like a game. And I suppose it's hard to kind of prepare for that when you don't have a game in front of you. So I suppose we'll learn from that as well. And I think in the latter stage of seasons, if we're to face that again, I think we'll come and face it better than we did at the start of the season.
It's a shortened season this year, obviously a third of the way through already, where you have played less than everybody else around you. You can close that gap to the top of the table over the next couple of weeks. But I suppose, can Wexford get back into a position to challenge for the title, or is that maybe going to be a tall order given the start that you had?
Look, football's a very fickle game, and look, we got the results that didn't go our way, and other teams will get results that won't go their way. So I'd never say we're out of the title race. I'd always say we're fully in it. And look, if we get as we've got the wheels rolling now, if we just keep getting result after result, that's all we can control at the moment. And other teams will lose games. So you've seen people take points off Treaty only losing 1-0 to Shelbourne, and games like that where teams will come away with points where you wouldn't think they would.
Breifne, if you think about this though, the game in hand that they have, say on the likes of even Shells, they win the game in hand, they go level with Shells in third. They're only be 4 points off top. But like, if you look at that Shells game, Della, was that a real, how would you say, a real clutch moment for Wexford? Because if you lose that game, a lot of people are probably writing you off going into that game as a club because of the 3 games previous. Was that a big moment?
That was a massive moment, especially in the manner that we won as well. I suppose a 1-0 win is always, like, a win is great, but a 1-0 win against Shelbourne is always tough to come away with because the amount of pressure they put on the last 10-15 minutes. So for the girls to grind that out was really impressive. And I think that'll stand to us now as we go into the next couple of run of games.
We're seeing a lot of variation from last year, maybe into the performances from different teams. Has anyone other than Wexford, of course, impressed you in what they brought to the table this year that maybe they might have had in previous years?
I definitely think Treaty have impressed me. They for them to come out and challenge teams this season. Like, they always would have gave you a challenge, but I really feel that they've done really well in this first few games they played at the start of the season, and they have a really good system and they're very well organised. So when we come to play them in 2 weeks, it'll definitely be a tough game.
Do you find yourself watching more football now that you're injured, like watching other teams a lot more than maybe you would have previously?
Yeah, definitely. I suppose I just came out of a run of exams there, so I was kind of stuck in the books. But definitely now that I have the time, I'll definitely be more into kind of watching games. And like you said, we're not analysing our game as much, so I'll have more time to kind of look and watch other games as well.
Obviously, you're from the Midlands. I don't know. My research didn't stretch this far. Are you one of the Carlow crew, or what are you studying?
No, so I'm in Trinity. I'm studying computer science.
Very impressive. Very impressive. How's studying going? Obviously, you just finished exams.
It went well, actually, but I'm definitely glad it's done now and kind of focus on rehab and enjoy the summer a bit.
How do you focus on your rehab in terms of, like, with the summer off? Do you up your rehab, or because you talk a lot about planning? So, like, what's the next couple of months in terms of the rehab for Della Doherty?
I suppose I kind of looking at the moment in kind of 1 month blocks or 2 month blocks. So for the next kind of 4 weeks, I've pure strength training, and it's kind of just getting me back to running at the moment. That's the main aim at the moment. So it's kind of short-term goals for like a long-term effect, if that makes sense. And I think at the moment it's just getting the kind of gym sessions in, especially on the days you don't want to, or the days you're like, I'll just do it tomorrow. It's making sure that, okay, no, I need to do this today, and just keep ticking over. And like that, kind of reaching out to the girls when it gets tough and stuff like that, and having people around you.
Yeah, it's a tough call coming back from that kind of an injury. I did mention before we came on air, I gave you a bit of warning that this was going to happen. A bit of a Jeopardy moment for you. I'm going to give you the answer to a question, and I want you to tell me what the question potentially could be. And I'll give you the context. I was at a Sligo Rovers game. Unfortunately, it was the game you got beaten in last year up in the showgrounds. You were the answer to the question. It's Sligo Rovers related, and I'm wondering if you know what the question is.
I'm not 100% sure, but my only kind of guess was who's the number 4 for Wexford.
No. I'm sure that did happen, but that's not the one I'm talking about. It was actually one player on the pitch had played in Sligo Rovers' first ever game in under-17 league 3 or 4 years earlier. And it was you. You played for obviously Piedmont at the time, so that was and nobody got the answer there either. So that was. But speaking of, you obviously came into the league at that under-17 grade, made a big impression that first year, 2018, if I'm not mistaken, with Piedmont. It didn't quite seem to, although you were getting game time, it didn't quite seem to be what you wanted. What inspired the decision to go to Wexford back in the day?
I suppose I was just kind of a young player, and I think I was kind of maybe needed a change and needed a new environment that was kind of more suited to me. And I felt talking to Wexford, I think that was the environment for me. And I think it's proven that it's definitely an environment that I've flourished in, and an environment that I've enjoyed playing in.
No regrets.
No.
I have to ask about Piedmont, because when you come into the league, there was a lot of hype around you. This new youngsters coming through Piedmont, a lot of people talking about you. During the early days, when you were impressing in Piedmont, you were playing a bit of midfield as well. Did you read anything into that, or what were you thinking when you were, when you come into the National League first as this young kid?
To be honest, I didn't. I think I was just there to enjoy my football. I think I'm kind of the same now these days. I think just there to kind of go out and enjoy the football. And I suppose the injury kind of puts that into perspective too, that kind of go out and enjoy every game now once I'm back. I enjoy every training session and everything like that.
What is the prognosis? When can we expect to see you back filling a pair of boots or a jersey? Are we looking at next year?
Yeah, looking probably January, probably pre-season next year. And I think as it's such a severe injury, I think it's better to take excess time than needed. You could probably push it and be back maybe for the end of the season, but then you risk the chance of doing it again. So I think it's doing the rehab right and kind of coming in strong into pre-season and then flowing into next season then.
Have you picked up any new hobbies when you had the little bit of time away from the game?
I've actually taken part in the UEFA coaching course, so I'm going to get some coaching badges while I'm not able to play on the pitch.
Very, very sensible. Well, listen, Della, thanks so much for joining us. I know it's a little bit later than we planned, so thanks for accommodating us, and the very best of luck in your recovery, and obviously to everybody at Wexford for some challenges ahead. Best of luck.
Thanks a million. Mind yourselves.
Thanks,
Della Doherty there. You know what? I'm not surprised she mentioned the coaching badges at the very end of that, because I got the impression from the conversation, the way she was talking about what she was observing, there's a coach in there somewhere, I think. Although not for a couple of years yet.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, we're seeing more and more of them doing even younger. So, like, listen, there's ample opportunities in college, summer camps, get our skills out. There's no harm in doing things like that. I think the one thing you will say, being in Trinity College, she's definitely got her head switched on, and like when she talks about short-term goals and stuff like that, there's no real aspiration to rush anything. Like, there's no real. She doesn't care if it takes a little bit longer. And I like that, from especially considering the type of injury that she had. I think the way she come across that, it's take her time. There's no rush to everything. It's a strong mind for a youngster, and that really impressed me with her.
Absolutely. We might as well start at her game then on a little bit of recap of last weekend. Wexford 2-0 winners in DLR. Reasonably comfortable, I think it's fair to say. I only got about half the game myself, but your thoughts?
Yeah, reasonably comfortable enough. Like, DLR defended well in periods, but I think Wexford's quality shone through a little bit, and in the end, they ran out comfortable enough winners. When they get the first goal, you always think they're going to get a second. And young Michaela Lawrence, it's great to see her on the score sheet. Ciara Rossiter continues to run amok as Ciara Rossiter does. I think the one thing about Ciara is that it's probably like many Wexford players that we've never really seen her in the green of Ireland, because I think on form on her day, it's probably nobody who can really. There's not many who can stand up and match her. And from a Wexford point of view, it's good to get 2 wins on the bounce. The Shells win, I think, was a real turning point, and if they can pick up another couple of wins, build that bit of momentum, continue to go, I think they'll drag themselves back into that title race, because I think teams around them will drop points as they play each other. And if Wexford can get that couple of run of games going over the next couple of weeks, they could really close that gap. From a DLR's point of view, it's back-to-back losses. It's a difficult one going into the game they have this weekend. Then if you include the draw with Treaty before that, like it's been a tough season for DLR, but we were expecting that because of the ample changes that they've had. And I think Graham Kelly's just trying to solidify that squad. A couple of his more attacking players out injured as well doesn't help either, but a comfortable enough win for Wexford in the end.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some big challenges ahead for all teams. I'm just looking at the league table here in front of me, and the amount of points dropped across the board by every team. Even Shamrock Rovers, who haven't been beaten yet, have still dropped 6 points in the table. So there's plenty of opportunities there, I think, over the next 10 or 11 games for clubs to pass each other out and leapfrog each other. One club who did exactly that at the weekend was Galway. They had a good, solid victory down there. They were 1-0 winners over Treaty United. Again, an improved Treaty that we've seen in recent seasons. Eve Dawson with a first-half strike just on the half-hour mark. Another header from a corner. A bit lax from Treaty, but I suppose, again, we're seeing them make less and less of those kind of mistakes from game to game.
Yeah, but as Della said, for me, I agree with her. They're probably the most improved side, and one that's impressed me this season. If this game had been last year, they probably lose this game 4 or 5-0, and that mistake, that first half goal sort of drips into a second, a third, a fourth. Whereas we're not seeing that as much this year. We're seeing them, okay, they concede, they get themselves back into their structures, they get themselves back into their step positions, and I think that's probably the thing that I like about them, is the fact that they're consistent and they're not just dropping away. They're playing for the 90 minutes. They give, like, at times if you're defending a lot, it can take a lot out of you. But they've learned the harsh lessons from the 8 goals they shipped against Athlone and the 6 they shipped against Shamrock Rovers. Like, I think we spoke off air before the show. If we take away them 2 results, I think their goal difference is something like -2 for the rest of the games, and like that's a massive difference. And I think they've come on an awful lot under Alban Heise. From a Galway point of view, second home win of the season. Momentum continues to build for Galway, and I think since that Shelbourne game, they've just stepped on a notch after notch after notch. Like Bows and Wexford, the 2 teams to beat them at home. Other than that, they've been nearly paradise at home, apart from the draw to Shamrock Rovers. So it's another good result for Galway, and they look to just continue to build that bit of form. But no fixture this weekend. Probably Phil Trill's probably not that happy that the break is coming, the bye week is coming at the wrong time for them.
Yeah, but I think Galway are this year's version of what Athlone did last year. They got a couple of decent results, and the confidence just started to grow, and girls kind of growing into that.
Any humble pie going?
No, not yet. No.
I think I need a bit, because I predicted they finished really low this season, and every week
I think we've already had that humble pie a couple of weeks ago.
I think I keep needing to eat every time that they keep going up. But like the biggest thing for me is like the fact of the players that they've lost a lot of players as well, and they're still pulling out these results, and they're getting in the results constantly, and that's the biggest thing, is that you can see there's definitely a togetherness with them this year, which is really important.
Can this sustain a title challenge? That remains to be seen, but I wouldn't write them off. I think they're going to be thereabouts, and they're going to be competitive in every fixture they play. So exciting times ahead for everybody at DC Park. I think it's shown how good that integration has worked, and obviously the powers that be in Galway have really bought into that. We're seeing maybe better from them than we're maybe seeing from some of the other clubs in a similar situation in terms of being part of the men's club. One of those, Cork City, very impressive first half at the weekend, 0-0 at half-time against Shamrock Rovers. But I suppose, as would be expected, Shamrock Rovers just kind of opened up in the second half and really pulled Cork apart at ease into the closing stages of that game. They really did a number on them in the last few minutes, though.
I wouldn't have expected the floodgates to open that sort of way, especially when they get into the break at halftime. You think, okay, reorganise, let's just go again. And then the Shamrock Rovers come out 2 minutes into the second half, Jamie Thompson hits the back of the net, and then you're sort of thinking, oh no. But like, I think in fairness to them, like Cork, they sort of held on for a little bit, and then like the last 3 goals came in the last 10 minutes, like, and that's probably the most disappointing thing from Danny Murphy's point of view is that, yes, if you lose that game 2-0, you're probably like, okay, yeah, first half, great build on it. But then when 3 goals come at the end, you're sort of thinking it takes the gloss off that real good first half performance. And is it a case that Cork just couldn't sustain the Rovers, the wills that much that they relented? Probably yes. And for them, it'll be extremely disappointing. But for Shamrock Rovers, it just shows that they continue to go. They continue to go all the way, and they continue to push until the very end. At times, they held on against Peamount for that draw. Amanda Budden pulled them out of Wool with the penalty save. But like, it was a real good bounce back for them. And I think for Shamrock Rovers, like, it just shows when they click, they can really score a lot of goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mentioned at the top of the show, you were in Dalymount for the clash of Bows and Sligo. I watched a bit of it. To be honest, I found it very difficult to watch. Probably not the best game of football. Is that fair to say?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the best game of football. To be honest with you, there wasn't a lot of clear-cut chances. I think Bonnie McKiernan in the Athlone and the Sligo goal was very good in the first half in particular. Quick off her line at times and read the situations very well. I thought she was one of their better players, but there wasn't really many clear-cut chances. When Bows got through on goal, Ciara Bates-Crosby, an extra touch, gives the keeper an opportunity to come and smother it when they were getting wide. They just couldn't really do anything in the final third. From a Sligo point of view, they really struggled to get Emma Doherty and Casey Howe into the game, and it was one of these that both sides making a lot of mistakes. When the goal comes, it's a lovely delivery from Rachel Doyle and Lisa Murphy right in her head. 2 weeks in a row, she scored a header for them, and a vital header for them at that. And like, for Bows, it's 6 points against the bottom 2 sides in the last 2 weeks. They'll walk away saying thank you very much, but performance wasn't great from Bows. And I think from a Sligo Rovers point of view, it's hard to see it change. It's hard to see the monotony change, and when you're on such a bad rut, it's difficult then to turn it around. I think this week's games is probably their title seat, their biggest game of the season with the trip to Cork, and like, it's hard to see how they're going to turn it around. For the league's point of view, you'd like to see them getting something out of the game, but like, at spells they looked like they were okay, but it wasn't for sustained long periods either, which is probably the most disappointing thing.
Yeah, no, it's been a rough time for the club. I think they're going to struggle at the weekend as well. Again, could be serving themselves up some humble pie next week, but they really need a result in Cork, I think, to rescue what could turn out to be a really tough season for the club.
But the thing is, Cork need the result as much as Sligo need the result. That's the funny thing, and the way the league is going, and like, it's going to be a case of hunger. I think that's the biggest thing that's going to come down to. I think some of Sligo's bigger experienced players are going to need to stand up and really put in a massive shift if they are to get something out of this game. And like, it's the question is, how do you turn that monotony? Yes, it was only a 1-0 loss. It's better than what they've had in recent weeks, but how do you turn it into a draw or a win? That's the big question, and there'll be a lot of soul searching this week, I think, within Sligo to see how they turn that around.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of the final game, I happened to be in Athlone almost by accident, but was delighted to be there. It was a really entertaining game of football. Not a lot of quality on show for large periods, but it really burst into life in the last 10 or 15 minutes. Either side could have won it, but it was Shells and Christy Gray who got that little touch on a header at the back post from Alex Kavanagh corner that gave Shells all 3 points. And Shells needed that pick-me-up as much as anybody else has required it over the last few weeks too, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Wexford result, they were probably thinking, okay, we're going down there, we get 3 points, we continue. Whereas if they'd lost that game against Athlone, you're sort of thinking, okay, they're going to dip back into it. Athlone, obviously, they'll be extremely disappointed. I know you want to chat about the penalty call towards the end, and like, take away that and take away the header. Like, as you say, it broke into life late on. Like, from Athlone point of view, they'd have probably been happy enough to take a point, especially the way the game was going, and walk away. And when Shell score late on, they'd be disappointed. But from an Old King point of view, I think for the run of games that they've got coming up, that they need big results. I think that was an important 3 points, and it's not always going to be pretty. But I think for Noel, he'll just be happy to walk away with the 3 points.
Yeah, absolutely. I think interesting times for everybody down there. Let's hear from some of the players and the coaches of that game. After I caught up with a few people at that match, so let's hear from Tommy Hewitt.
Your thoughts after that tight game, but unfortunately for you, just sealed at the end there by Christy Gray's goal.
Yeah, look, we was kind of feeling that way on the bench. We were actually saying, I think they'll get one chance and they'll score, because we didn't really capitalise in the first half, the amount of possession we had and good chances. Second half, we really didn't create any really good goal scoring opportunities, but I still felt we were, I'm not going to say the better team, but we definitely were matching them, stride for stride. But yeah, look, that's a sucker punch at the end there. But fair play to Shelbourne.
Bit of a game of 4 seasons. They started off in a bit of a horror show in terms of the weather, but it got nice towards the second half. But how much do the conditions come into the game preparation?
Yeah, you know yourself as being involved for a long time. You try and look at the weather and see is it going to be raining, but you're not low and you don't know what's going to happen in Ireland. So no, I don't really think it affected the teams anyway at all. But no, look, we try and plan for it, but best laid plans and all that.
In terms of the actual game today, you had your opportunities. Chloe Singleton had one where if she'd been a little less honest and gone down, she'd have got a penalty. Hits the post when she does stay on her feet. What's the thoughts looking back at some of those opportunities that were wasted, I suppose?
Yeah, look, to be honest, yeah, you're right with Chloe there. Yeah, if she goes down, she's penalty. Probably a little bit too honest, and she probably said that herself. But when you're in big games like that, and this is a big game because Shelbourne are double champions, they're cup champions. They're coming to us who had a good season last year and have been on a decent run. We've put 3 together. And then you're asking referees to get the big calls right. And in fairness, he didn't get it right tonight. They took the easy option out, give me the yellow card because I asked the question. I think the standard referee needs to be upped. That's I know there's calls all from the men's side of it, but definitely the women's side of it as well. I just think, for big games, we deserve big referees.
You're talking specifically about an incident just after they took the lead. Innocuous ball over the top. Keeper's dealing with it. Kiva Keenan, as is her right, goes to protect the player.
Absolutely.
And then for whatever reason, Ocean ends up on the ground. What was your thoughts on it?
Straight away, she threw her out of the way. I understand you can get your body in front, get your body in front of the player, protect the player. But she actually threw her on the ground. Now, to me, that's a penalty. Anywhere else on the pitch, that's a free kick. So the referee has to get that call right. And then you've an assistant referee 10 yards away from it. And she doesn't give it. So, I'm a bit aggrieved about that. And I think there are things that should be looked at. Like, there's no redress for them. It's all down on me. Managers lose jobs because of decisions like this. And I'm not saying they're perfect. Referees are not perfect. But, they got to get them big calls right. They got to get them right.
What's next for yourselves?
Yeah, we play Shamrock Rovers here next week. We'll lots of positives out tonight. I don't want to be negative. Lots of positives, to pin Shelbourne back for 30-35 minutes in the first half. Not a lot of teams do that. I know they were missing Pearl and Jessie as well, but I think that could have galvanised them as well. That can happen as well. But for ourselves, we regroup. We'll get back training Monday night and we look forward to Shamrock Rovers here next week.
It's a hard look today, but a good performance nonetheless.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Thanks.
Tommy Hewitt there, very honest. Sorry, you should continue a bit. Very honest about the situation, about that particular incident. And you're right. I would like to maybe take a quick look at that if you want to spend a minute or two.
Yeah.
It was the most thing I've ever seen on a football pitch. Just to put the context, Shells have scored. We're about 30 seconds on from that, and obviously the game speaks for itself in terms of these two. Obviously, have a bit of recent rivalry. But this is the situation. We're just going to play about 15 seconds of the game. We might watch it through twice because they do play it replay as well. So let's just jump straight in and have a look at the game.
So Julia went over now. There's a lot of pressure there, but the keeper's going to get there first. Hey, that's a foul. Hey.
That's ridiculous.
I've never seen anything like that before. She just blatantly, the ball was already in the, look at her. As Nyla recovers on the, she's not even looking at it.
That is ridiculous. I watched it over here in the replay.
So you can see yourself, it's a strange one. You had only seen that maybe for the first time this evening. Your thoughts on Aaron?
The first thing by Kiva is fine, where she sort of backs into her to stop her to get near. That's fine. But when the second movement is not great. it doesn't look great. And as Tommy said, I agree with him. If that's anywhere else in the pitch, that's a free kick.
Yeah.
So
100%.
if you're saying anywhere else in the pitch that's a free kick, then it's a penalty. I think Kiva got a little bit lucky. Probably a moment of madness from Kiva as such. The second play, I think what she does in the first initial effort to shield the ball from and to make sure Courtney Maguire could pick up the ball is great defending. But the second little bite of the cherry was for me, it's a moment of madness.
Is there a little bit of fault at Courtney Maguire's feet, basically because the ball comes in, just pick the thing up and move on with play? I know you want to kill the clock, but like Roisin Malloy is literally 3 or 4 meters away from you.
Courtney has a habit of doing this sort of thing of waiting to try and pick the ball up. I remember watching her in goal for Bows against Galway in the Oscar Trainer a couple of years ago, where she tried to do something similar to a Galway player, and the Galway player nicked the ball at her before she even got her hands to it and went in and scored. So has a bit of a tendency to do that. I think from that situation, listen, if you want to be smart in that situation, pick the ball up, just run to the other side of the box or something, waste a couple of seconds when the player's in the box. So there's no need to take a risk in that situation. Just pick the ball up, and even if you're on a run to the box, waste a couple of seconds and then just clear at the last second before the referee starts getting on your case. But it was a strange one not to pick it up, and she sort of put Kiva in a bad position as well there.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, the game was decided not by that incident, but by 30 seconds or 60 seconds earlier, Christy Gray putting the ball in the back of Athlon's net. So I also caught up with Christy just at the final whistle of the game on Saturday evening.
Christy Gray, nice way to finish the game. Only goal of the game, 3 points. Got to be happy with the win.
Yeah, no, obviously a different result last time we were at the field, so it was awesome to come away with 3 points and do anything could to help our team, get those 3 points. I think it was a good team performance overall, and the girls were buzzing after, and we just keep it going from here. But it was a great team performance overall, and we'll just carry it into the next weekend. So,
how are you enjoying the season so far? How's life in Ireland treating you?
Oh, I really like Ireland. I think a lot of us, like, who have maybe played in other places, are grateful like English is the first language. The girls are so friendly. Like, we have a really good group. I think it's really special. I mean, we'll say it week in, week out. Like, this squad is really, really deep, so we have really good training sessions. And I think it just sort of anyone can come in at any point and make their mark and do what they can. So I think that's a special part about this group. We all get on really, really well. So.
In terms of today's game, it wasn't looking like it was going to happen for you today. It was a bit nip and tuck on both ends, and it could have really gone either way, but it was your header late on the last couple of minutes that sealed the win. What's it like to kind of contribute that to the team?
Honestly, I just want to do what I can to help us get 3 points, and if that means putting my head on it, sliding to get to the back post, do whatever I can. I mean, Alex put a really good ball into the box. She consistently puts in good service all the time, so I'm just happy to be able to put it away.
In terms of, I suppose, the differences between what you're used to maybe back in the other, I know I wasn't going to say America, but on the other side of the Atlantic is what I was going to say. Obviously from Vancouver, went to college also in Canada near Toronto. What's the facilities like? What's the setup like? Are you surprised or impressed or a bit underwhelmed by the facilities?
No, I think it's different everywhere you go, and obviously, like, this is the first year the league is professional, and I think it's really an exciting part to be a part of football in Ireland. Obviously, the first time the national team's qualifying for the World Cup, like, there's a ton of really exciting momentum around the league, around our team. I think facilities, it's sort of hard to compare. I mean, like, throughout Canada, there's schools of different sizes as well. Like, Queens has beautiful facilities. Our football team is quite good, which helps with stadium and that type of thing. So I think it's hard to compare college to, like, being over here. But I think overall, like, we have a really great staff, a much bigger staff than we did at college. So super grateful for that, and everyone's really involved.
What's the plan? I know it's a bit early in the season to be looking forward, but is this a one-season wonder? Will you be here next year? Are you looking kind of to stay in the league? Is that the plan?
You know what? I'm open to everything. I think for me, I'm just really trying to focus on the present moment. And today was winning this game, getting 3 points, do what I can to score. And, like, for me, I'm just focused on next weekend and this season. I think it's hard to think too far ahead. Obviously, I get on with the girls really well, and I really am happy here. So, I mean, I'm happy to stay if I can keep performing. That's always the goal. But I think just for me, focusing on the present, and for us, that's next game against DLR at home.
Very diplomatic answer. I like it. Christy, congratulations today. Great header, great goal, good win in the end as well. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I argue with a lot of people.
Chris, there, jump straight into another video on YouTube. I'll stop doing that again. But how happy was she? She just looked like full of, just so bubbly and so delighted with just getting the winner and getting the win and being part of the league, part of the team.
I know a lot of people within the club actually rave quite a lot about her. They talk. I'm surprised she hasn't had more chances than she's actually had, Breifne, to be honest with you, this season. But I think the fact of the way them players who've come in from North America have made a big difference for them. Kayla Hamrick at times has been very good for them. Rio on the wing has been good. I think Maggie Pearce has probably been the best of the lot at the minute. But like, I think they've made a good impact. I think the way she speaks quite well as well. And I love the fact that when you asked her about things and she's just talking about being in the present moment, and then she switches up next week, it's just DLR. You know, I love that. I think it's just the attitude is just. It's not about the future. It's not about what's coming down the line. It's about what's happening now, and what's about to happen next. I like that. I think I'd like to see her get a bit more of an opportunity for Shells, because I think she can definitely add an awful lot to that team.
Yeah, let's take a quick look at the Premier League table. We'll jump over to our website for a moment just to see how it looks at the moment for the Women's Premier Division in the League of Ireland. Peamount top of the table alongside Galway United, although Galway do have that one extra game played, 19 points. Both a little bit off. They've dropped points across the board, as we've mentioned a few times. Shamrock Rovers, they 1 point further back on 18, still unbeaten, the only unbeaten record in the league just at the moment. Shells, after that win, 16 points brings them up to 4th place. Bows, they had a win as well. They're up to 5th place with 15 points. Athlone on 13, Wexford on 12, but they do have a game or two in hand on nearly everybody else in the league. DLR, disappointing for them. They lost 2-0. They sit in 8th place, while Treaty, as we've mentioned, and Cork and Sligo Rovers at the bottom of the table as it stands at the moment. Anything in that, Aaron, in terms of who you're surprised by? For me, I think Galway, it's the story of the season so far.
Yeah, Galway probably a surprise. I think Shamrock Rovers probably considering like that. Well, I think we expect them to be right up there because of the investment they had. They sort of put some people, if you talk to Rovers fans, they sort of tried to put a damper on and to reduce the expectations. I think if you're Collie O'Neill, you have to be very happy with where you are after the first 8 games. I think they've showed glimpses of what they're capable of doing. I think you're right, Galway's been really, really good this season. But for me, as I'm going to agree with Della, for me, the one team is Treaty United at the minute. The way they've been performing, I think it's been brilliant, and I think I expect to see them get more results. The fact that they lost 1-0 to Wex, 1-0 to Galway, they've lost 1-0 to Shells. They've 2 big games coming up, massive games coming up. And if they could put in another 2 great performances in these 2 games, they may not pick up any points in the 2 games, but it'll really show that the progress they've made. And I think this is where we'll really see how much they've stepped on in the next 2 weeks. But probably the surprise package is Galway. I think Wexford probably not where we would have expected them, but I think consistency's probably killed Wexford. Like, you look at, they played 2 games. Then the Cork game was called off. They had a massive gap because of the international, the massive gap. Then because of the bye week as well. Then they played the midweek game. Then there's another gap again, and so they haven't really got going. And now that they've started to get a bit of run going, I suspect to see more consistency from them. But I think Peamount top of the table. I'm not surprised, having watched them a couple of times.
They do have that kind of experience within the ranks. But speaking of Shamrock Rovers and the investment they made, realistically, anything less than a league title for Shamrock Rovers, given the investment that's been made and the players they've recruited, I know that it's their first season back in the league, but anything less than a league title really is a poor season for Shamrock Rovers, surely.
I don't know about that. From our point of view, yes. From yours, people looking in on the outside, yes. But like when I chatted to Collie after the Shamrock Rovers, after the Peas won, then the draw with Peamount, then a little draw, and I started asking the sort of question, and Collie just kept pushing me back to, it's one game at a time. We're not thinking that far ahead. We're thinking about where we've come to, what we're building, and what we're trying to do. So I don't think within the Shamrock Rovers team that if they don't win the league this year, they'll be too disappointed. I think realistically, if they finish in the top 3 for them, I think based off everything we're hearing, that they'll be extremely happy, and then they'll be looking to build upon that next year. Like, you have to think the amount of players in that Shamrock Rovers team especially younger players who don't have an awful lot of women's Premier Division experience even. And then you're looking at even like the likes of Abby Larkin. Like Abby Larkin's probably played less than 30 games at senior football. Jess Hennessy's probably a little bit over that. Like there's players who haven't played an awful lot of senior football either who are coming into Shamrock Rovers. They've tried to invest an awful lot in youth. Yes, they brought in Stephanie Zambra and Anya Gorman for real experience, but apart from that and Amanda Budden, the rest is a lot of really, really young side. And I think that's what they're looking at. That they're trying to clear the injury front. Savannah McCarthy back now. Maria Reynolds is still a bit way off. And like this player, so I think from their point of view, they'd be extremely happy where they are. And I'd say Collie O'Neill, he might say it that like if they finish second, he'd class it as a really good season and a good cup run. Whereas I think their real aim for the league is definitely going to be next year. But if they win it this year, it'll be a massive bonus.
It's funny. You said you don't think Abby Larkin's played more than 30 games. I've just had a little bit of a check on our website, and it's actually considerably more than that. She's 36 league games, 4 FAI Women's Cup games, and 2 games in the Champions League for Shells. So
it's not an awful lot. But it's not an awful lot of minutes, especially for somebody who's so young. Like, you know,
it's not a lot of minutes for the amount of games she's played. A lot of those are substitute appearances.
A lot of them are substitute and things like that. But if I rephrase it, she hasn't got a lot of league starts. Probably the best way. But like, you know, and I think player, it's going to take time for them to really gel into Collie's system as well. Like we're seeing, I think they probably didn't expect to be unbeaten at this stage, and that's being totally honest. They probably expected to have a bit of a tougher start to the season than they had. I think the Shells performance, they showed a lot of glimpses of what they were capable at times. Like you look at the P-Mount game in particular, I think that was probably the real first opportunity that we've seen where Jamie Thompson was marked out of a game and she was very ineffective, and you could see how frustrated and the sort of look she was cutting, and Collie ended up substituting her in that game. That's the sort of game that they're going to have to learn. The younger players are going to have to learn to. You're going to have to take your licks and your wounds at times, because I thought Chloe Maloney and Jetta Barrell put her under extreme pressure, and like they're still building. I think the second half of the season we'll see an awful lot better from Shamrock Rovers, where it may be enough for them to win the league, but I'd say for them, expectation to win it in the first season, it's probably coming from people like us and people talking about the investment more than within the group.
Yeah. Speaking of Shamrock Rovers and what's coming next, it is, of course, that trip to Athlone that Tommy mentioned in that interview. Some exciting games this weekend. Shells host DLR, Cork City. They take on Sligo Rovers, as we mentioned. It's a big game for both clubs. Treaty have the daunting enough task of dealing with Peamount United, but I think they've shown that they're able for anything this season that gets thrown at them. Wexford Youth and Bows in action down at FAI Park. While Athlone hosts Shamrock Rovers, as we mentioned. Which game catches your eye? Are you likely to be at a game yourself?
I'll be at Shells DLR Saturday. Going to another sport in the evening time, so I'll get to that. I probably won't see much live. I'll watch bits and back. But the game that catches me is definitely Athlone and Shamrock Rovers. I think that's another test that Shamrock Rovers going down to playing that Astro pitch as well. I'm intrigued to see what way this one goes. There's no doubt that Tommy will have the Athlone girls well and truly roiled up and ready to go because of what happened last week with the defeat. But for Shamrock Rovers, like if they get another 3 points there, it's just going to continue to build that bit of momentum and build that form. I think the one game for me, I'll keep an intrigued eye on. Well, there'll be a couple, but the one I'll keep an intrigued eye on is Wexford against Bows. It's the one club, and I take Shamrock Rovers out of this because they're only in the league, back in the league this season, that Bows haven't taken points off since they've come into the league. Wexford's the only one left that they haven't got a point off. They've lost every game. Not sure this week will be the time that they will turn that around. But like as you say, I think Treaty will put in a good performance, and I think if they come out maybe a 2-0 loss, I think that'll be a success. That'll be a good performance against Peamount. But like, I know from the neutrals, a lot of people will probably be talking about Sligo and Cork just because of the fact of the way the seasons have gone. If it's a draw, it's probably not a benefit to either side. A win to either side could have a massive impact on their season, and I think that's the sort of game that we'll be looking and hoping a result comes out of.
Yeah, I think for me, across all 5 games, there's a kind of a narrative that you can paint through all of them in terms of Shells and DLR. There's a couple of girls on either side who want to have points to prove on that.
I didn't even think to mention to even consider that, considering you've got the couple of players who have gone from the opposite way, and like if you look at the DLR team, several of the DLR team probably played for Shells once in a time as well, and that's the way the league has Shells, and it's something that maybe we've talked a lot about off air, and like I think Shells deserve a good bit of credit for this, because you look at the amount of players around the league who've come through Shells academies and stuff like that. Whereas there's an awful lot at one stage. I think last year, I think there was 10 or 11 DLR players who'd been with Shells at underage at one stage. So like I think the academy of Shelbourne is doing quite well, and I think it's definitely an interesting narrative that a lot of people talk about, especially when Shells play other clubs. How many previous Shells players? But yeah, the couple that are playing DLR for the first time, some of them may have a point to prove, having really not had as much game time as they probably would have liked this season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out. I think, though, you're dead right. Athlone and Shamrock Rovers is probably the game of the weekend in terms of what we can expect to see over the next couple of weeks. Just to sum up, we might touch just briefly. The World Cup was in town. You got a chance to? Did you get your chance to get a hands on the cup?
No, I didn't even go to it. I decided not to take the day off, not to take time off work, but just because things have been hectic in the last couple of weeks. I'm trying to save the holidays for going to Australia in a couple of weeks. So Andy went in for ourselves. But the only thing is, supposedly the only people who are allowed to touch that trophy is if you're a previous winner or you're a heads of state. So they had it in a glass box. Like, great to see Olivia O'Toole sort of being wheeled out and given a bit more exposure every time you see, because she's an Irish icon and top goal scorer ever for the women's side, and it's great to see her getting that little bit of a push in the media as well, and like loads of kids there. Great to see that it was in the Mansion House as well. Like, it's been a positive, as even Christy Gray said. It's everything in the women's front has been a positive. The new Nations League draw obviously happening last week as well. A trip up north. I'm hoping the game's in Windsor Park against Northern Ireland, just to see, because I think that'll be a great one. And I think everything is bubbling. New season tickets launched for the women only, first time ever. I think there's a lot of good things happening at the minute, and I think hopefully the Women's National League can sort of catapult off the back of it and get a boost off the back of it.
Yeah, talk to us about the Nations League, because obviously a couple of interesting trips. Albania's in there, Hungary in there, and of course that lovely little clash with the North. We don't get to play them enough. I know they qualified for the European Championships. We didn't quite make it. We're now going to the World Cup. So both teams could argue that are on the up. We're traditionally a bit stronger than them, but that is not necessarily what might happen next time we face them in that Nations Cup later in the year.
Yeah, it's a strange one in that sense, because like we were a good bit ahead of them, and then the Northern obviously put on a lot of investment. Like, you look what they've done for the Euros, all the home-based players were put on professional contracts for 6 months. They had a dressing room built over the far side in Crusaders club where they'd all decked out and stuff like that, and like they really did put a lot of investment. It'd be interesting to see where we are matched up compared to them. Like, the Nations League is a strange one, because we're in Group B, we're in League B, the second division of it. If we top the group, we get promoted to the top tier. But the thing about the top tier is then you could be playing big teams constantly. It's a strange one. Like, some nice trips. I think a trip to Hungary will obviously be nice. That'll probably be a difficult away task as well. But like, going to Albania is probably the one something like that you probably would have liked to avoid. It's not a great place to travel to get to either. So, but like, it's a mad one, because the group games will happen. The 6 games will happen between September and the first or second week in December. So it'll come around quite quickly, and then the European Championships will obviously start in the second half of the new year. Because like, even if Ireland were, say, to make it to the semi-finals of the Nations League by winning their group, they then have to play games in February again. So it's one of these that's going to add an awful lot more fixtures. If you're an Irish fan, the only good thing I'll say is you'll get more games at home. That's the only thing. We don't play enough games in Ireland. That's the biggest criticism that I'd have of the FAI at the minute, is that a lot of games seem to be away from home constantly. So we've obviously got the 2 pre-World Cup games coming up, but other than that, like, we haven't really played at home since we qualified for the World Cup. So at least this will give the fans an opportunity to come out and watch the girls.
Absolutely. Well, listen, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks to those of you who stuck around a little bit later than normal to hear what we had to say, and also to listen to what Della Doherty had to say on her rehab back after a horrific injury at the tail end of last season. To Aaron for joining me once again, pleasure to have you as always. I'm in Breifne and Aaron. I'll be back with you again next week for another exciting look at around all the things happening in the Women's League of Ireland. From us this week, that's it. We'll talk to you again so shortly.